sign it into law. Now, on another matter, Mr. President, yesterday I outlined a number of the broken promises we've seen in connection with the new Obamacare law. From the promise of being able to keep the plan you have and like, to the promise of protecting Medicare, to the promise of lowering premiums, to the promise of lowering health care costs. Democrats also said that taxes wouldn't go up and existing conscience protections would be respected. Looking back, it seems like there wasn't anything our Democratic friends, including the President, weren't willing to promise in order to get the bill across the finish line. But there's another category of disappointments, too, and that's all the aspects of this bill Democrats didn't even talk about before it passed. We all remember when Speaker Pelosi famously said, "We have to pass this bill so we can find out what's in it." And one of the things Americans found out about was something called IPAB, the Independent Payment Advisory Board. Now, this is an unelected, unaccountable board of bureaucrats empowered by this law to make additional cuts to Medicare based on arbitrary cost-controlled targets. As a result of this new board, 15 bureaucrats would now have the power, without any accountability whatsoever, to make changes to Medicare. What's more, there is no judicial or administrative review of IPAB personnel or recommendations. In other words, they're accountable to no one. IPAB isn't answerable to voters, and it can't be challenged in the courts. Its main role, as the Wall Street Journal editorial board put it, will be the inevitable dirty work of denying care. The inevitable dirty work of denying care. In an effort to control spending, IPAB will limit patient access to medical care. It's that simple, and frankly, it's totally unacceptable. Republicans recognize the problem of Medicare spending and the need for reform. We also recognize that IPAB isn't the answer. This is just one more reason Obamacare needs to be repealed and replaced. And that's why even Democrats are co-sponsoring a bill to repeal it over in the House, calling it a flawed policy that will risk beneficiary access to care. So this isn't just a Republican issue. There is strong bipartisan opposition to this new law. Look, if the President himself doesn't even want to talk about this law anymore, and even Democrats are sponsoring repeal of parts of their own law in the House, it should be pretty obvious there's a fundamental problem here. We need to reform health care, but this reform made things worse. The evidence and broken promises are all around us. It's time the President acknowledged it, and it's time the two parties came together and did something about it. It's time to repeal Obamacare and replace it with the kind of common-sense reforms Americans really want, reforms that actually lower costs and which put health care back in the hands of individuals and their doctors rather than bureaucrats here in Washington. Mr. President, I yield the floor.